So first, my name is Yat. I know it's getting into a sleepy afternoon, so get some energy in here. Anyway, my talk today is more about use cases for blockchain. In this case, why we think content will be king again with NFTs. So let me just give you a little bit of an introduction to this one. In 1996, Bill Gates penned an essay where he said content was king. And why did he say that? Well, 96 was roughly the time when the internet actually was similar to where blockchain is today. When you think about internet access, there were about 36 million online users at that time, mostly on dial-up. Today on blockchain, maybe 30-odd million wallets. And he saw what all of us generally see in this conference, a future. He saw that the internet was going to connect all of us, and because of that, we would all be able to receive content at very low transport cost. In short, this was a new content economy. You were able to make content, whether you're a big company or a small startup, and you could participate in this economy because the distribution of content would be so cheap. And then he said content is king, whether this is software, games, movies, music, everything would basically grow to grow because of this new content revolution. But what Bill Gates may not have quite fully understood at the time is that while the cost of transport came down to almost zero, the cost of discovery went up exponentially. And we see this today when you look at the App Store or when you look at other forms of content discovery. So for instance, this is when Jonathan Perelman came up with a counter quote just 2 decades later. He said, content is king, but distribution is queen, and she wears the pants. In fact, what he really said was, you may have the best content in the world, but if nobody can find you, it's worthless, right? Can there be a Game of Thrones if it wasn't for HBO? Can there be a Rovio without the smartphone? A Mario without Nintendo, right? This was not the future that people envisioned when the internet came about. People thought everyone can participate in this, everyone can be making content, but instead, anyone who's making content has become strangled in this world of distribution. So it's the distributors that decide what you want, not the content creator. And perhaps the most obvious example in this is music, right? If you look at Spotify, if you look at the artists, they're not making much money, even though billions of their streams are being delivered. It's a real problem for content creators. So it's been switched. And we think through the blockchain, this can change. Now, before I go into the meat of the conversation, very quickly, why do we think we know anything about this? Well, we're a game company originally. We're one of the top 50 game companies in the world. According to Pocket Gamer, we're a public company that is probably the only game company that's public that has embraced blockchain because we saw this future. We've done over 13 blockchain partnerships, and we're fortunate to be led by a very strong management team. And if you want to go check us out on the web, you can do that later. But we're big believers in this. And the reason we got into this is because of CryptoKitties. So I'm sure everyone in this room will have heard of CryptoKitties. Otherwise, why are you here, right? However, our studio in Vancouver was involved. In fact, our head of games in the US is one of the co-founders of CryptoKitties. And so we became investors in the spin-off that became Dapper Labs, and also the distributors for Greater China, and also the ones who put CryptoKitties in the HTC phone, and so forth. So that was our beginning, actually over a year ago. And what we saw was, for those of you who might remember, there were so many transactions, millions of dollars, $25 million of transactions in a very short period of time that brought Ethereum on its knees. And people quickly sort of were like, whoa, actually gaming could be a really good use case for blockchain. But the other thing that was also interesting is this opportunity of this invention, which was the non-fungible token, which I'll go into shortly. So let's talk about NFTs and content. So I'm not going to go too deep into this because I'm thinking you should know this, but in general, if you don't, all you need to know is a non-fungible token is the opposite of a fungible token, as in it's not like Bitcoin and Ethereum. It is unique. It is scarce. It means that there is an attribute inside this token that is only for that token. Now, the real world parallel would be like art. Take an example for a Picasso. It's worth 10 million, 20 million, you don't know. But the reason why it's valuable is not only because it's the only Picasso, but because someone out there validated it. They said, through the provenance, through the curator, through the verification of other people, that this Picasso is the only one out there, therefore it is valuable, it's in this museum, it's in the Louvre, it's in whatever, and maybe it's worth $10 million. Now, what the blockchain does here is it can do exactly the same thing in terms of giving it the provenance, the validation. It can say, this particular CryptoKitty is the only one in the world with only this color pattern and only this unique feature. Now, what that means is that you are assured that this cat is unique. Is it worth $10 or is it worth $100,000? The most expensive cat was sold for $140,000 US, for those of you who may remember or have read the headline news. So now, if you imagine this environment in something like, whoops, sorry, let me go step out of here. So if you imagine this environment in something like games, and I'll quickly go slowly later into our project, the Sandbox, but imagine a game in the future where you're playing and the items inside the game are not, in fact, unlimited. They are scarce by nature. Every one of you who has played games will understand that a game has an economy, whether it's an online game like World of Warcraft or a game like Fortnite or one of our own games like Crazy Kings. There's an economy inside that game. But one of the problems that games have is that the economy is run very much like the Venezuelan government. In other words, when you need to have currency, we just go and make 1 billion more coins. And eventually, for those who play the game long enough, they become ultra-billionaires, which you may have experienced if you've been in a game for a long time. And the result, of course, is that for any new player that enters that game economy, it will feel like he's entering downtown Manhattan at childbirth. And he can afford nothing. Every piece of item and clothing or thing that he wants to purchase has to cost millions because you can't burn the currency fast enough. Hyperinflation. And games tend to ultimately die after 5 to 7 years as a result of that. Now, if, however, inside a game, for instance, you have items that were scarce. Let's say there's only 1,000 of these kind of guns. The content company is not actually able to produce any more of these guns. We had this specific example with CryptoKitties where we bundled 2 CryptoKitties into the HTC phone, and we had to explain to them that actually you have to pay $15 for a pair of cats for every phone that was sold. And that idea that you had to actually pay for a digital cat into a phone was at early stages kind of incomprehensible, because can I just take a copy of that and put it there? No, you can't, right? Because the cat is unique. In fact, we don't have enough cats. We have to buy them from the market. So a player would now own an item that he or she can sell to another player. Now that idea, how does that change the concept of engagement in the game, the ownership of that game? As a player, the retention mechanism will increase and the value will also go up. So I want to give you an example of something that we're working on specifically called Sandbox, which is basically Minecraft on the blockchain. It's basically how we envision the gaming future to look like in a live project. It's something that is already in beta, and the full launch will happen sometime in summer. It's basically Minecraft, voxel builder style. Every item in there is true ownership. They're non-fungible tokens. There's a currency in there called Sand, and there's a decentralized marketplace. And what we've decided to do here is, much like Minecraft, we allow the consumer to actually make their own items, just like in Minecraft. But every item you craft is a non-fungible token. Whether it's the pickaxe made by you or the pickaxe made by someone else, that's entirely up to you, whether you think that's valuable or not. But the utility and the use case may be the same or could be unique. That's entirely up to how you decide to design this. But what's fascinating now is that if you've made this work in our game, the Sandbox, now, because it's an NFT, you can export it to any other game environment that supports it. Because essentially, it's like an open item, right? So this is important because when you think about games and virtual ownership inside existing games, you actually own nothing. This is one of the biggest problems that our industry has. Because this ownership problem we have is that it's like you going into H&M and buying some clothes, and if H&M shuts down, your clothes disappear. This is the virtual world right now. But in games, that's what happens. But you don't need, this doesn't have to happen. I have an item, I should be able to own it. Even if I don't use it, I still get to store and keep it. Now, the reason we picked this style is important for us, which is essentially like digital Legos, volumetric pixels, because you give anyone a digital sort of volumetric style, Lego and they can build something beautiful. But if you ask them to draw something, you need to have skill. Right? You need to know how to use Photoshop, or you need to know how to draw. And so if you look at things like Roblox or Minecraft or Lego, you give them a bunch of bricks and everyone can build something. Inside, we will allow people to also create their own game experiences. Now I think this is interesting because you can create your own utility for the items you create. So imagine you made some NFTs. You can use it in our Sandbox game, or you can use it in games that you've created yourself. In other words, the items you crafted, you can make your own utility inside the game for a specific purpose. Right? This is something that allows for user-generated game content and game creation as well. So UGC. And what we believe, and this is where I think fundamentally where we think the world of gaming will change, and actually content in general, is that because of non-fungible tokens, content will become the platform. Now if you think about today, how do you discover content? You go on Netflix, you go on Apple, App Store, you go on Google Play, and you find the content. And somehow it decides that this piece of content is relevant for you, right? Or you might go to an influencer. But actually, if you own items that were digital, that were permanent, why shouldn't the content find you based on what you own? And so the way we see it is that once you have digital ownership of items, and it's discoverable that way, companies will make content for you because of what you own. So I'll give you an example for those of you who may have played, I know, World of Warcraft players here, anyone? All right, 2 hands, not many gamers here. Anyway, it used to be 3, great. So as a ratio, pretty good actually, but anyway. It used to be one of the biggest online games out there, right? Like 10, 20, 30, 40 million players. But the game got less popular, but people spent hours and hours on time on this, like years of their life, minting and creating these items, but they're all virtual. They mean nothing. Now, they've stopped playing the game. But it's a community of tens of millions of users that have items in that game. If all these items were actually on the blockchain, they were non-fungible tokens, would there be another game company that will come out and say, hey, I'm going to take that community that has all these items and make content for them because I want those users to play my game. I'm going to make my world compatible with World of Warcraft. And we think this is how it's going to be because it's a great way for discovery. It's not centralized. It's actually decentralized in a way. I know it's a community, and that community could be a community of millions or a community of just hundreds of thousands. And so you could have ecosystems around the content platforms that is made. In other words, these non-fungible tokens will make that reality possible. So whether it's playing on the Sandbox, playing on our own Crazy Advance Heroes or some Garfield games, it doesn't really matter, right? The developer can choose to do that. And of course, one added element is that every game will now have to have a marketplace, right? Because while you can trade the items outside of the world universe, inside the game, there is a marketplace effect. And in fact, World of Warcraft has shown in the past that marketplace effect can work. The problem is there was no scarcity. It was unlimited items. So the auction house, effectively, what it used to be called, had to be shut down because nobody cared about it because every item was anyway abundantly available. So why would I pay for that? All right. So and then we've recently launched this $2 million creator fund, which we pay both in fiat and tokens, to encourage development in this area. So if you want to check it out, on sandbox.game, you can go on and see if you want to create items with our UGC non-fungible token creator and make items for Sandbox and in the form of non-fungible tokens to try to promote that area. Okay, so let me leave you with this last final thought. This is our industry, the gaming industry. In total, it's actually a $138 billion industry. Freemium mobile games is $70 billion. Okay, that's the world we are in right now. What a lot of people don't quite understand is that that $70 billion comes from less than 3% conversion. So if anyone knows Candy Crush or Fortnite or has played any of these games, 97 to 99% don't pay anything. It's entirely driven by that single-digit percentage. Which means that if you're able to convert a single percentage more of the playing audience, it's a $20 to $25 billion market opportunity. And so our premise is that this is going to change our industry and digital items massively because of this ownership issue. Today, you're making content and you own nothing, right? I mean, when you play a game. Why would you pay for that? It's not just, it's fun, but it's also frivolous. It has no value. But if you knew that the game that you're playing and you're spending money on actually has value, you might sell it on, maybe there's profit, but at least it's permanent, it's tangible, then would you be willing to convert more? And our point is, we think that the conversion rate is not going to go from 1 or 2 or 3% to 4%, it should go to 10 or 15%. Because the hours of time people spend is significant. And there's the element of, oh, I need that item. I have to buy it from someone. So we think it will turn the gaming industry from like a $138 billion industry to a significantly larger one as a result of that. And so if we are right, then content will be king again. Thank you very much.